Oh, hello, everybody. I'm Jay. I'm one of the volunteers here. And we have a good many volunteers here tonight, including our president, Meinte Veldhuis. And some of the new volunteers may not have met him. This will give you a good opportunity to do that. Really impressed with the volunteer turnout. How many volunteers do we actually have here tonight? So, super. Really proud of you guys. Thanks for coming out on this evening. For the volunteers, if you could be prepared to give tours of the domes after the talk, that would really help. Obviously, the weather is not going to let us open up the domes and do any observing, but the telescopes themselves and their mechanisms are pretty interesting, and I think the visitors would enjoy that. Any first-time visitors here tonight? Whoa, great. Welcome, guys. Now, I hope this won't be your last time. Please give us another chance. You know, as Meinte keeps reminding us, we provide the telescopes, but it's up to the visitors to bring good, clear skies. So, you know, we've done our part. So please come again. Third Friday of each month. We had scheduled Ivy's talk tonight, figuring April will be one of our best nights. And this is what happened. That's what we get for planning. But glad all of you are here. Volunteers know this, but for visitors, this is about our, Meinte, 26th year open. We're located on school grounds, but we're not part of the school system. We cooperate with the school for night astronomy classes, for STEM programs, but we're an independent nonprofit organization located in Berthoud, funded entirely by generous donations from the community. So if you're in a position or you know of somebody who's in a position to help us financially, we always appreciate that. We have a donation box at the door on the way out. Nothing is ever required of visitors. Everything we provide is always free. We're glad to do it. Our mission is to provide an experience for students in science, technology, engineering, math, and all the related fields. We try to do that through several outreach programs, as well as hosting family visitors here. Generally, the families come in the evenings, school groups come during the day. If you're interested in a private visit, please go to our website, www.starkids.org, and you can sign up for your own private visit. Otherwise, groups are always welcome, and if it's K through 12, we're particularly interested in that. We've had about 85,000 visitors, or a little bit more, since we opened the doors, and we're looking forward to being here for a good many more years. We have a lot of new projects underway. I won't take time tonight to talk about that. If you're interested, talk to one of the volunteers, Meinte or myself, and we'll tell you about some of the new exciting projects we've got going. With that, I'd like to mention a little bit about some of the STEM programs we offer. We work with Berthoud High School during summer months to offer a STEM internship to high school students. These are typically between the junior and senior year in high school, and students don't have to be enrolled at Berthoud High School, but that's the school system we work through. If you know of a student who's not enrolled at Berthoud who would be interested in the program, please have them contact the observatory. There's a contact email address at our website, and we'll be in touch with them, try to work them into the program. This year, for the very first time, we're going to do a middle school STEM program. That's being headed by one of our volunteers. If I could ask Daniela to stand. Daniela Ortiz has put together a tremendous program for middle school students. So again, if you know of any middle school student who would like to be in a summer STEM experience, contact us through the info@StarKids email address at our website. We'd love to be in touch with them. Okay, I won't delay the program anymore. I'll introduce Dr. Terry Bullitt, who for several years headed our STEM summer internship program. And Terry has been a volunteer with us for quite a few years, but his main focus, in addition to science and investigation and being principal investigator on several science projects we had here, his main focus was on working with high school STEM students. And Terry knows just about as much about radio as he does astronomy, and every time I turn around, I'm impressed with something else he's involved in. So with that, Terry, I'll let you introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Jay. I'm Terry Bullitt. I'm the radio astronomy guy here, or one of them, and was one of the instigators. I remember back quite a few years when Mighty tapped me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you know, there's too many clouds in the Berthoud environment lately for public star night. So let's build some radio astronomy instruments so that we don't have to worry about the weather." And like I said, tonight's a perfect night for radio astronomy. Enough about me. Let me get on to our speaker here. I've known Ivy since she was a STEM student here, I think class of 2019. Yep. And she came here as a STEM student in her junior year and was one of our pioneering radio astronomy students with the big 16-foot dish we have out there. Well, the one that used to be there, this new one's a little bit better. And I'd like to kind of introduce Ivy with a few anecdotes. I've had the pleasure of, once she graduated from Berthoud High School, she became an astronomy student at CU in Boulder, where I used to be a researcher. And part of her scholarship was requiring to have a summer job. And I said, well, what better person to get to work for me, for someone I know who was a reliable worker. And so I jumped at the opportunity to give her a four-year job at the university. And during that 4 years, we had a couple of interesting adventures. I think most of the work you did was fighting government bureaucracy to try to get into the building, get your NOAA access badge and a key to the office so you can get to your computer.
Key to 3 of those 4 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was ridiculous. But she did a very good job at archiving some of the data that I collected, which I believe is now over 1 petabyte of data on hard drives that she used to keep under her bed in Boulder. That's data security for you. Petabytes, that's 10 to the 12th. So we had a couple of interesting adventures. I dragged her out on a couple of field experiments. The first one was a sounding rocket launch out of NASA Wallops Island on the East Coast.
Sure of that means.
Okay, we packed up a couple of vehicles, did a caravan out there. Along the way, one of the trucks that we were driving blew its turbocharger on the highway somewhere in Kentucky, I think. And she was running shotgun in that vehicle, and we had to find a place to get the darn thing repaired because it was full of stuff we needed for our experiment. And so she navigated us to across the river. There, we had to find a bridge to get across the river and into Kentucky, and find a place to get the truck fixed. And then Justin, who was driving the truck, my graduate student, opened up the hood and dove in there with a bunch of tools, and Ivy went in there with him. And we eventually got the turbocharger replaced, got the truck up and running, and then made it in time to Wallops Island. She had a bunch of fun time, I think, with the sounding rocket launch, and had the advantage of also meeting the Air Force Thunderbirds. And she got to meet the Thunderbird pilots up close and personal, and some of the F-16s and the YF-22s they fly. in addition to watching a sounding rocket launch. So that was a fun time. And our second experiment was the total solar eclipse this last April. I bought a camper and converted it into a mobile radar van, and we dragged that out from here to Erie, Pennsylvania. Set that up in the parking lot of a speedway, and installed a couple of temporary antennas. Got excellent radio data. Of course, it was cloudy right up until the time of the total solar eclipse, but you did get to see the total solar eclipse. And of course, on the way back, the camper blew a bearing out in Sterling, and we had to leave it there and limp home. But all's well that ends well. So that I think that give you the kind of character. This is the kind of person, if you want something done, ask Ivy to do it. She's, as I said, she's not afraid to do the dirty work. And with that, I will give you our speaker here, Ivy.
Thanks, Tom. Is this clip on me? Flip this way.
I can read you all, I think.
All right, how's that?
You're good.
Is that better? I can just talk loud too. There's no problem there. Well, thank you so much, Terry. I got the privilege of working with Terry for 4 years. It was great. Lots of adventures, yes, just like you said. Where's my pointer? Oh. Hang on. Let's go. Yeah, all right. Let's go that way, like a cassette player. Okay. Well, I do have pictures of that Wallops Island trip in here, so I'll just dive right in because we'll get there eventually. I'm Ivy Knudsen. For those of you who don't know me, I was a volunteer here in high school. Found my old shirt from freshman year somewhere, so I needed to wear it. But I went to CU, and now I work for the Southwest Research Institute. We're a partner of NASA, and I work a little bit on New Horizons mission and the Lucy mission, but I'll be mostly talking about the Lucy mission today because there's a lot of outreach events that happen with that called Occultations, and what better place to talk about the outreach you can do in science than here. So that's what I'll be talking about. And a little about me. So here's me against that wall in 2016. And me with my first telescope, just a little one. I'm taller than the telescope, and my height has since become a metric for the telescope that I'm using. So this telescope is still in my bedroom at home actually, but it was my first one. 2016, still in high school. 2019, graduated. There's me in range control at Wallops Island in Virginia. This was one of the days we spent just waiting for launch. You just have to wait in your window. I believe this was in between the first and the second launch. And just because, why not? I'll tell a funny story about that too, because we're not necessarily in a rush to use the domes right now. So this was in between the first and second launch. So there were 2 launches, and it was out of that base. So you could actually go outside and watch them, or you could watch them from range control. And so the first one I watched from range control, and the second one I wanted to watch outside. And I kind of forgot about that. And so it was, I think, the second to last day of the launch window, and we needed T-minus 15 minutes. And so there were 16 minutes left in the day. So I just started, I'm packing up all my stuff. I took off my shoes under the desk, and I'm just waiting. And then all of a sudden, Robert Pfaff goes, "We're launching, go." And so T-minus 15 starts, and everybody's just excited. We're like, okay, make sure all of our stuff is up. And then Terry leans over to me with about 4 minutes left and goes, "Didn't you want to watch this outside?" Yup, sure did. And so I got up and I ran, and I had these shoes on. I didn't get them on right. And I ran for the door because we were on the second floor of this building. So I needed to get out of the building, outside into the parking lot. And then I realized I didn't even know what direction it was launching in. But as I was running for the door, I didn't get my shoes on right, and I face planted straight into the door, and it made the loudest bang. And I just didn't turn around because I didn't have time. But I came back and I asked Terry, "So did anybody hear that?" And he goes, "Hear what?" And I really just face planted into the door. "Did anybody see that?" And he goes, "No." And then years later, I mentioned that, and he goes, "Oh yeah, no, everybody heard and saw that. I just didn't want you to feel bad." So that was my first time in range control. Really made a good impression. But then 2023, I graduated from CU Boulder with my degree in astrophysics. It's really cool. They let you graduate at Fisk Planetarium, which is awesome. And then they play the Imperial March as all of you degreed students walk out, which was great. And then that same year, later that year, I got hired at the Southwest Research Institute. This is me with my current boss, Dr. Kelsey Singer. She's the deputy PI for New Horizons. She's an awesome lady. And then since then, I took a very intentional gap year after getting my degree to work with her. And these are just a couple snapshots from 2024. This is a slightly bigger telescope that I got to use. It's about my height. And this is what we use to do the occultations, which I'll talk a lot more about. And then this is me at Fisk, which is actually the same place, I'm just now realizing. So I was on that stage in this picture, but talking about the results of the Lucy occultations, which you'll all get to see in like 30 minutes. And then moving forward to this year and the next 5 years, I'm very pleased to say that I get to use an even bigger telescope. This is at least 6 or 7 of me. This is a wide angle shot. This is the Lowell Discovery Telescope in Flagstaff, Arizona. It's amazing. Highly suggest going to visit if you can. And then this is the Meteor Crater in Flagstaff. I was just accepted there to begin my PhD in planetary science, and I'm moving there in August to begin that. Thank you, thank you. It took me 2 years of trying. An intentional gap year, and then I got gifted another one. What can I say? I gotta do more occultations and more science, so it all works out. But moving forward, my work at SWERI. So like I said, I work a little bit on New Horizons and a little bit on Lucy. New Horizons, this is more of my nitty-gritty science aspect of my job. I'm researching the craters on small bodies, so you'd think, what's there to know about craters on small bodies? Way more than you think, and I do have some supplemental slides with some more of the intricate stuff about that project if you're interested for after. But what's really nice is I still get to keep doing outreach. So this is me at a school in Longmont teaching kids about phases of the moon, which was really fun. And then on the other hand, Lucy, what we'll talk about today and what lets me keep my hands on telescopes because I just can't stop. And this is a bunch of our telescopes. I lined these all up like this. They're so heavy, this took so long, but I thought they kind of looked like stormtroopers. And so I faced them all towards the right. So I faced them all towards us, and then I took that picture. And then yeah, there's me with that telescope again. This picture was taken in Texas. So a little bit about my work on New Horizons, and then I promise we'll get to Lucy. So for those of you that don't know, New Horizons was a mission that launched in 2006, and it was gonna go by Pluto and then a Kuiper Belt object, and that was all it was really supposed to do. And it did both of those things. So here's this lovely image of Pluto that we got from it. This was on stamps, it was on everything. It is our only picture of Pluto, really. I mean, there's different ones, but it's the only craft that's been out to take a picture like this. And then it kept on going, and it took this picture of Arrokoth. Arrokoth is a cold classical Kuiper Belt object. Big long title, but it's considered a primordial body in the outer solar system. So it was a very cool picture to get, body to get a picture of, because essentially we think this formed with the solar system and then hasn't really been disturbed since. So that was very cool. And then this is the New Horizons spacecraft. If you're interested, this is the camera LORI, the Long Range Reconnaissance Imager, and it did a really good job at taking this picture of Arrokoth, and so actually this exact same camera is used on the Lucy craft as well, which we'll get into later. But New Horizons at the moment is traveling about 50,000 miles per hour, and it is just still going. It's on the edge of the solar system, and it has a little bit of fuel left over than they thought. So it went to Pluto, it went to the Kuiper Belt, and it has a little bit left. So right now they're actually in extended phase 1, and they're trying to find another object that just requires a little bit of direction to get to. There's not enough fuel to stop it and move it anywhere, but if, we need to shift it a little bit, we can. So they're actually looking for one of those objects now. The problem is they're so far away and they're so small. This is really, really hard to do, but they're hoping to be able to use the new Rubin telescope to help try to find something for it to look at. For context, Pluto, well, our farthest classified planet, Neptune, is at 30 AU, and an AU is the distance between the Earth and the Sun. So Neptune is 30 of those, Pluto is something like 40, and I think Arrokoth was around 44, and New Horizons right now is at about 65. So 65 AU out there, and it's just going So finding something for it to look at is very, very challenging, but they're trying. And now on to Lucy. So Lucy is the 13th Discovery class mission selected by NASA, and it launched in 2021, and it's flying by 8 asteroids, 6 of which are Trojan asteroids, 2 of which are near-Earth asteroids. And this is just a little picture of what Lucy looks like. This is the spacecraft, and then this is the badge. And then there's a different version of this badge, which I'll explain, but I brought stickers if anybody would like them. Take all of them. We don't need any more, I promise. But moving on a little bit about the Lucy spacecraft. So this is what it looks like for context. Each one of these solar panels is about 24 feet in diameter, so it's a fairly large spacecraft. Yes, madam.
Is Lucy an acronym or is it just a name?
Oh, I'm gonna get to that. And I think on the next slide, actually. But it is just a name. So you'll notice it is not in all caps, but it has a namesake, which is really cool. But yeah, so this is the spacecraft. All of the instruments are on the IPP, the instrument pointing platform. And then here's that LORRI camera again. So it's Lucy's LORRI, so it's LORRI, and on New Horizons, it was P-LORRI for Pluto's LORRI, because we didn't know what we were gonna call the other asteroids, so it was for Pluto. And then same thing, it had P-Ralph. But LORRI is an imager. It works really well because it can image really dim things. So all of these bodies that they're going to, New Horizons with Arrokoth and Lucy with the Trojans, have a very low albedo. So albedo goes from 0 to 1, and it's a percentage. So 0 is a black body, 1 is white, and albedo just measures how reflective a surface is. These asteroids, I think, have an average albedo of 0.1, so it'd be like going to image a block of pavement, which you need a very special camera to do, and LORRI did a really, really great job, and so they just made it again and gave it to Lucy, and it's been working great so far. But the thing about it is that it's a monochromatic camera, so it only images in black and white. And the color of a body, if they have any color at all, can tell you a little bit about what it is, and we don't want to miss out on that. And so we also paired it with L-Ralph, or on New Horizons, P-Ralph, which is basically just an imaging spectrometer. And basically how that works is when light hits a material and then gets reflected into your camera, the material that it hits creates an imprint on that light. And so when it hits a prism and breaks apart again, you can see that signature and figure out what that material was that your light hit. And so we can have all that information as we fly by. Yes?
So how big is that box? And is it just open to space? There's nothing in front of it, right?
Nope.
All unfolded?
Yeah. I don't know exactly how big this box is.
Red box? If you know what a red box is.
Yes, yeah, pretty much. I mean, if these are 24 feet, maybe like 3 feet?
3 feet, yeah.
Ish, or maybe even less. Yeah, it's not very big. At least for what you'd think for a spacecraft.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay.
But it's very expensive. Yeah, it was very, very expensive.
Charge
Yeah. But so you might have noticed Lucy is not in all caps. It's because Lucy doesn't stand for anything. It's just a name given to the spacecraft. And it has a very great namesake. So Lucy is named for this Australopithecus that was discovered in Ethiopia in 1974. And you may have noticed on a couple slides before, I can actually just go back, these names Dinkinesh and Donald Johanson for the near-Earth objects come from the discovery of the Lucy fossil. So Dinkinesh in the Amharic language, which is what they speak in Ethiopia, means you're marvelous, and that's where it was a skull at first, but they ended up finding the whole skeleton. And you'll notice this was the graphic on my intro slide, and then on the, on the graphics, the skeleton is pretty much everywhere because Lucy, the skeleton, skull, the fossil collar, was a really key piece. It proved, bipedal a million years before they knew at the time of its discovery. So it unleashed this whole big chunk of our history that nobody knew existed before. And so that's what we're hoping the Lucy spacecraft will do going to the Trojans. The Trojans are thought to be the fossils of the solar system, which we'll explain more on in a little bit. But so we also are hoping that when Lucy goes to these Trojans, it'll uncover a huge, just like the Lucy for human evolution. And then this is Donald Johanson. He's the paleoanthropologist that discovered Lucy. We named an asteroid after him, and part of the reason why I wanted to talk about Lucy is because the Lucy spacecraft is encountering the asteroid Donald Johanson on Sunday. just very exciting. And this man, Donald Johanson, will actually be in our office to witness it, which is just gonna be great. So yeah. Oh, I have no idea. I mean, he's here on the left, and this was 1974-ish.
Okay.
So your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, not sure, but I'm very excited to get to meet him on Sunday, which is gonna be great. So moving on a little more about what Lucy is gonna do. Let me see if this will work. I have a video. Oh, yay, okay. So Lucy started at Earth. It already passed by Dinkinesh. Donald Johanson's happening on Sunday. It's gonna fly out to the L4 swarm of Jupiter, hit your Ptolemy, Euripides, Orus, and Lucas, gravitationally encounter Earth one more time, go to L5, and hit the Patroclus-Menoetius binary. So backing that up a little bit to talk about it again. So just said a whole bunch of things that I'll explain. So the L4 and the L5 swarm of Jupiter, those are the Lagrange points 4 and 5 of Jupiter. And then this is where the Trojans are. And so Lucy's encountering two bodies that are not Trojans, Dinkinesh and Donald Johanson. And those are basically test runs of all the equipment on Lucy. And so we flew by Dinkinesh, you make sure the camera works, you make sure your spectrometer works, you make sure you can get there, you make sure all your navigation systems work, you make sure you don't hit it, you know, you gotta test a lot of things first. And so Dinkinesh went amazing. And I have pictures at the end of this presentation, and I wish I put them up here, because the pictures taken of Dinkinesh were really amazing, and I, for some reason, got to be in the room. I wasn't even on Lucy at that time. But the pictures came down, and Dinkinesh ended up having a satellite that we didn't know was there. And then as it went around, that satellite actually ended up being a contact binary of two things. It was like kids in a candy store. It was astronomers getting fresh data of things they didn't know before. It was amazing. But what the Trojans are, so the Trojans got captured in Jupiter's L4 and L5 Lagrange points, and then I'll explain how that happens on the next slide. But you'll notice Dinkinesh and Donald Johanson are named after things like the anthropologist and the Lucy fossil. And then all of these names, the Trojans are called Trojans from the the heroes of the Trojan War. And so the L4 camp, this is the leading camp. This is Jupiter for context. The leading camp, these are all named after Trojan heroes from Homer's Iliad. And then this is the Greek camp. These are named after Greek characters in Homer's Iliad. And then there's only a certain amount of characters in there, and there's millions of Trojans. And so they've started moving on to Olympic athletes for the satellites we've been finding around these. Because we've actually found a lot of satellites that we didn't know were there before, and they need names too. So there's Trojan heroes and then Olympic athletes is the naming scheme for this. Okay, so why are the Trojans important at all? Why is Lucy going there? Why are they fossils? So when the solar system formed, we had this protoplanetary disk, and fast forward 3 to 4 billion years, we have giant planets. They're on different orbits than they are today, but we have giant planets kind of more compactly in there, and then we have this giant disk of debris of all these little small bodies. And the giant planets were not on a stable orbit yet. And so Neptune just started migrating outwards. It started encountering all these things behind it. It started pulling it back. Well, that was not without consequences. Neptune just started wreaking havoc on the poor outer solar system. And this then became called the scattered disk, aptly named. And it flung up to 99.9% of this population inwards in the solar system, outwards, out of the solar system. It formed the Oort cloud. It formed the Kuiper belt, it formed all kinds of things, but then everything that Neptune threw at Jupiter was so large by that time that its L4 and L5 Lagrange points were stable enough that it caught most of the things Neptune threw at it and kept them. And then the giant planets encountered each other, more things got flung everywhere, and then they finally calmed down, and Jupiter held on to those Trojans. And so this is a nice little picture of the Trojan. This is, I think, less than 1% of them in this picture. There's a ton. But yeah, they were in this outer disk of the primordial solar system, and they got flung inward and they got caught by Jupiter, and they've just been staying there ever since. And so we want to go see what they're made of. We want to know what's the composition of these things that were in the outer solar system when it formed. How much of them are still ice? What are they made of? Are they binaries? Do they have satellites? Are they covered in craters? Have they fractured? what's their composition? There's all sorts of things that we can learn from these bodies. And so that's why Lucy's going there.
Has this?
Yes, so only Jupiter has these because Jupiter, first of all, is large enough. Jupiter is significantly larger than the other planets, but also when the giant planets were encountering each other, Jupiter had enough force to basically disrupt everybody else's Lagrange points, and they weren't able to hold on to any of their Trojans. And I'm sure Jupiter lost a lot of Trojans in that process too, but it's just so large that it was still able to keep a very significant population. And so why it can keep this population, so every two-body system in the solar system has 5 Lagrange points. So this isn't Jupiter, this is Earth, but it works for these purposes. So here's the sun, here's Earth. You have L1 and L2, which are equidistant on either side facing the sun and away from the sun. And then L3 is on the other side of the sun. And then L4 and L5 are at 60 degrees in either direction. And so the only reason that they stay at L4 and L5 is because those are the only Lagrange points that are gravitationally stable. So they basically act like little celestial parking lots on either side of Jupiter, and they can just stay there. They are in stable orbits with Jupiter around the sun at L4 and L5. But lucky for us, we don't have to wait for Lucy to get there to learn about the Trojans. So this is what I was brought to Sweary to help with, and it's the entire process of occultations. So occultations are essentially tiny solar eclipses. So instead of the moon eclipsing the sun in the sky, you have a very small asteroid eclipsing an even fainter and smaller background star. And it casts a shadow on the Earth just like a solar eclipse would. They're not this big, this is just a graphic, but they can be pretty big. But if you have enough telescopes, you can line up and you can all see whose position, whose star eclipse and for how long, and you can actually learn a lot about the shape of a body and maybe even the rotation and orbit of a body if you get good enough data through occultations. But to do that, you need telescopes. And boy, howdy, do we have telescopes. So this is our warehouse out in Mead. These are Skywatcher 8-inch telescopes. In the foreground here are CPC 1100s. That's what I was in that picture with before. And then these are my stormtroopers with their necks extended. These are the Skywatcher 16s. I think we have a total of over 100 telescopes. Well, we definitely have over 100 because my first occultation was in February or March of 2023. So I was still a student actually. And this was my first encounter with the Southwest Research Institute at all. But I had a professor who knew Mark Bowie, who I've ended up working for very extensively. He needed 200 astronomers or people willing to use a telescope to pull off an occultation for the Trojan asteroid Ptolemaios because the error bars on it were just huge. The shadow pathway with its error bars were huge. We ended up having 100 stations, 2 people apiece across what ended up being in Kansas. It was either going to be Kansas or somewhere in Michigan, depending on the weather. But the perk of all this and the reason, so you can see all these little trunks. So every single telescope that we have can fit in these trunks, fit into a car, and people can drive it somewhere. And it all depends on the weather. So you're deciding the day before where you're going, and it gets even more ridiculous than that, which I'll explain, but it is pretty fun if you have the time. And so this was our first night. I'm in here somewhere in each of these. I didn't take these, but this was our very first time practicing. This was the first time I got to touch any of these systems, and this was by far the coldest night of my entire life. I think the temperature in these photos was in the negatives. And it was just such a nightmare. The laptops kept dying and the batteries kept dying and everybody kept being miserable and nobody could get anything to start. And it was just like the cables were freezing. It was just like walking up a sand hill. It was really not conducive for my first night. And yet now it's my job. It didn't scare me away. So but we came back. This is what it looks like without any people. So all the telescopes are in these trunks, and then these littler kits have all the accessories like the battery and your camera and your cables. And then, yeah, this is how we start, and then this is how we end up. And this was, I'm again somewhere in this picture, this was originally how we were learning these systems. And this is part of what I got brought on board to do. I don't know, I don't even think I'm in this picture, but there was about 200 of us in this warehouse, and we're all watching Mark put together a telescope system. And then you just take notes on your own, or if you have a really good memory, you can just memorize it. But he pulls it up and takes it apart, and it probably takes like 2 hours, because you have to explain what every cable does and every error message you could get on the laptop and how to take the picture and start to finish. There's a lot that goes into these telescopes. And so when I got hired, actually, I spent the year in between this campaign and the next campaign writing a guide for people to actually use these telescope systems and take with them into the field. And now we have a copy with every single telescope that we have. And so we no longer have to do this, which I'm very grateful for. But this was Kansas. So this is the pathway of the shadow. And then this is where we all were. So these are the 100 data points for the 100 teams that we had. And then actually across the pond over in Spain and Portugal, we had a few other observers that happened to be along the path. So they took data too, which was great. I think I was somewhere up here. But so this is, this is a little more about finding the site, which is just so crazy. So how this works is, so this, let me see if I can go back. So this is usually not a solid line. It's just because there are 100 lines within this space that it looks solid. It usually looks like this. So this was a campaign that we did in Texas. And this was actually my chord. So we use software, it's not software, it's Google Earth, but you can project your map onto Google Earth and highlight your chord. So this is my chord, and you quite literally just have to zoom in on a map on your own and just see, where do roads intersect my chord? Where can I drive to that is dark, that is ideally not private property, because then you have to talk to people and they think you're crazy when you show up with a car full of telescopes and need to be on their land at 3 to 4 in the morning. They don't really take kindly to that, at least not in Texas. The people in Kansas were really nice about it. But yeah, this is as good as you've got. And then you mark coordinates and you go driving and you go try to find it. And it can't be near lights and ideally not near roads. And it's pretty hard. And you don't have a lot of time to do it, especially not for this campaign. And this was the most recent campaign, so I'll talk a bit more about it. But yeah, in Texas, a lot of these were county roads. And then the site that I ended up at, actually, it was next to this giant thing. It had a fan on it. I don't know what it was, but we got there at night and the whole thing was lit up, which was just a nightmare. It was so windy. It was, yeah, it's an adventure every time. But we got really great data that night, which is great. This was in Kansas. So back to Kansas, you'd think, oh, you have to travel to Kansas. You have to drive to Kansas, stay there for 3 nights. That's a bit of a bummer. You can find fun things anywhere. I found a 50s cafe that had an Elvis statue out front, and it was really, really great. I had a kick out of that. We ate lunch there. It was great. And then this is my setup in Kansas, just off the side of the road. We were in somebody's front yard. This really nice lady, we just knocked on her door and we asked her and she said yes. So we also got great data that night. And this is what it looks like. So here was all of our stations. And then this is where Polemele ended up actually being. And so each of these lines was a coordinate from that map from before. And then blue means they got a positive hit, so their star actually eclipsed. Red means they got good data, their star just didn't eclipse. And then gray means they didn't get data for some reason. Maybe there was a cloud or they had a technological difficulty, something like that. But luckily, the only one inside of Polemele that seemed to have an issue didn't matter too much because they got really good constraints on either side. And it's a very elliptical body, which was very, very cool to see, because this was the data they were working with before. So they didn't have a lot to know. And I particularly feel bad for this campaign. This was in 2020 before I was ever a part of the process, but every one of these is gray except for this one that managed to get through the middle. And then I suppose this is the only constraint they have, because this red line, they got data, they just didn't see it blink out. So after this, you have 1 data point, you definitely need to do it again. And so they did it again, and they got 3 data points. Still, we wanted to do it again. And so then this was the campaign that I was a part of. Much, much better data. But you might have noticed here, there's these red dots. This was Polemele. There's also a red dot up here. which was very unanticipated. And it turns out Ptolemy has a surprise satellite that we didn't know about before. And on this campaign, we were able to get 2 data points, and this one was gray, unfortunately, but it's constrained on either side, 5 to 6 kilometer diameter, which is about the same size of Ericot, that classical Kuiper Belt object from before. Well, now you have 2 data points on a new object. That's not good enough, so you have to do it again. So then we did a second occultation for the same object. Here's me. I had been there for about a year, spent that year learning these telescopes inside and out, writing the guide, writing training practices, training people on them. We updated the crates a little bit. And this occultation took place in Baja California, Mexico. And so all of these have to be very meticulously packaged, very thoroughly inventoried. If anything's wrong with them, they get stopped at the border and sent back, which is just not what you want. So this is me and then a student from CU, and we're just securing a pallet of the tripods. This is my coworker, Brian, and he's moving the crates over there to stack in chunks of 6 and send those. And so we were able to get to Baja California, Mexico, which was so beautiful.
Negative temperatures in Kansas.
Oh, it made Kansas so worth it. It made it so worth it. Ptolemy really made up for not feeling my toes for a few days. So, but you'll notice there's no pictures of asteroids or stars or anything here, but some really beautiful pictures of the ocean. But you might notice in this picture of me, the sky and my screen, we were completely clouded out. We got no data, nobody got on. Yeah, it was a bummer, but same situation. You have your cord, you look at a map, you go, except being in Mexico so close to the border, there were police everywhere. So you have to tell them what you're up to so that they don't see people huddled around red lights in the middle of a field and you immediately have lights on you all over the place. I don't think anybody had an issue with that, but somebody almost did. But unfortunately it wasn't a good occultation, but it was a great trip. It was really beautiful. And yeah.
Sure, with all the blue dots.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly where you're going to see the occultation, is that it?
Yep.
So you have to have 100 or 200 telescopes.
Yep. They wanted to cover all the error bars.
That.
Exactly. So this is roughly where they thought it was going to be, is this gray dashed lines is where they thought. And then those were the error bars. And so that was the motivation behind having such an extensive campaign. They needed to narrow this down.
Okay.
There was such a wide, super wide.
And do you know when you're taking the data that you see it?
Yes, it's so fun. Yeah, so.
People in the middle got really excited and all the rest of the people were bored.
Yes, exactly. So my team didn't see it, but on this screen, when there's not clouds, is a really crystal clear picture of the sky. Wherever you have it, but these things magnify, I think, down to the 21st magnitude. And yeah, these stars are extremely faint because the asteroid's eclipsing them. It's a 10-kilometer object at 5 times the distance of Earth. It's extremely small in the sky. So if it's going to eclipse something, it's going to be a star you can't see with just any telescope. And so, yeah, when you're there, everybody you get on field and you set your timer and you just watch. And yeah, this occultation, I mean, I didn't see anything on this occultation, but the first Ptolemy occultation, my team didn't see the star blink out, and stars twinkled, so you see it maybe do that, and you get really excited, and it was my first one, so I didn't know, and I was like, well, I saw it twinkle. He was like, no, you didn't get it. And then especially after doing this most recent occultation, I was on the Menoetius team. We actually got the longest blink out, and it blinked out for about 20 seconds, and it's so obvious. Once you see it, you really get it. You're like, okay, no, it's like an eclipse. Yeah, it's very cool. But this is the most recent occultation. This was actually the last. Yeah, it would have been nice to be here, but the clouds had another idea. So we, based on the weather, all drove down to Amarillo, Texas, and this is actually the last occultation for the Lucy mission that they needed, was the Patroclus-Menoetius binary. Those are the only asteroids that Lucy's gonna fly to in the L5 point for Jupiter, so in the Greek camp. And yeah, so the first night we all drove down to Amarillo, Texas. This was also the longest occultation campaign I've been on, including the trip to Mexico. Usually you do 2 practice nights, maybe 3, and then there's event night. We were here for 6 days, just getting away from the weather. So we all drove down to Amarillo. I was on the Minoitius team, so we drove down to Lubbock, and the Patroclus folks drove over to Roswell, and then did a practice night. And then again, because of the weather, we were right here for our chords, but we all drove west. My team then drove to Roswell. They drove down to Carlsbad, practiced there. And then for event night, my team drove back to Lubbock, and then they drove over to Las Cruces. But finding a site, typically you're where you're gonna be the night before and you have all day. So we woke up in Roswell, drove back over to Lubbock, and then had to find our site for that day, which takes all day, and then came back, ate some dinner, got a few hours of sleep, woke back up 2, 3 a.m., drove out to our chord. Yeah, it was very, very extensive and very tiring, but totally worth it because you can't have space scientists in Roswell and not come back with a lot of pictures. So, I added these in right before this because we're not gonna see any stars, so I thought you all might wanna see some stars. Some nice pictures that I got in Roswell. There's me with Orion. This night was just so clear, and we caught the Perseids meteor shower, which was so beautiful. And then, of course, you have to stop by the UFO museum. Some of these pictures are mine, some aren't. This is me saluting to the alien from a movie that I don't remember which one it is. This is a guy named Jack Jewell, another movie set. This is another movie prop, and then just a whole bunch of our volunteers. I don't know if any of you have been to Roswell, but they really lean into the alien thing. Even the street lights have alien faces on them. Their Starbucks sign and Burger King signs are giant alien statues holding up like 2 for 1 special on Whoppers or whatever. It's incredible. Everything's green. They have murals like this everywhere. It was just great. But then once you're back in the car, you gotta drive all the way back up to Denver from southern Texas. And sometimes you just can't wait to process the data. I know I couldn't. This was mine. This was another girl. You know, you're riding passenger for 9 hours. What are you gonna do? You might as well get a head start. So like I'd mentioned, my team got the longest blink out. Our blink out was about 20 seconds. And so this is sort of what it looks like. This was just, I thought maybe we caught a satellite. This was just wind shake, unfortunately. But yeah, this is basically what you're looking at. So this is a light curve for a star. So constant flux, constant flux, constant flux, constant brightness, and then whoo, it just goes way dark. And then bam, it goes right back up, and then constant flux, constant flux. So it's very cool that you can just pull this straight out of the software in the car on your way there, and you can just see what you got. It's really, really amazing. And so this was Patroclus and Menoetius. This was the 2013 occultation. This was the 2022 occultation. And then this was the one I was just a part of in September of last year. I think I was Lucy 58. I was this one for Menoetius. Whatever the longest one is. I remember that I was the longest one, so I was really proud of that after getting nothing on the other ones. But this is what we call a limb profile, and it just tells us a lot about these asteroids before we can ever get there with Lucy. And so that's how we can discover satellites if we haven't already. It can tell us a lot about the rotation, because essentially what you can do is, if you know this is a shape of Patroclus, this is a shape of Patroclus, and this is a shape of Patroclus at different points in time, you can start to build a 3D model that when you rotate it in a certain way can fit all these different shapes, and then you can try to understand its orbit or its rotation. And same thing with Menoetius. And so when we start approaching it with Lucy and you get a light curve from it, you can learn a lot about the albedo from it immediately, because, for example, Donald Johanson that we're gonna encounter in 2 days is so wacky, it's just tumbling. We've all decided it's just tumbling because its light curve has no pattern whatsoever, and there wasn't an occultation done for it. And so we actually have a survey going around the office right now about what we think it's gonna look like, what we think its rotation's gonna be like, if it's gonna have any surprises, like a huge crater or a boulder, or somebody said an exogorth, which made me laugh a lot. Those are the worms that come out of asteroids in Star Wars, and they can eat you as you fly by. But these are all the people that make it happen. There's me, there's Mark Bowie, the only man I know who can outsmart the weather 100% of the time. And yeah, Doesn't happen without all these people. The Polemoli campaign I was a part of the first time was definitely the largest. 200 people is the largest to date, but it still takes an extensive amount of people. A lot of the people at this table live in Lubbock, so the community that comes together to do this, when we know where we're gonna go, we can contact them. They can help us find where should you set up telescopes? Where should you definitely not set up telescopes? Where can you do all of these things? And it's just really amazing to see this happen each time.
So who are the people just like?
Yeah, well,
Anybody can do this. This is the best part. I've brought in friends. Like when I joined as a student, I had no idea what this even was. I had never touched one of these systems before. And that's the goal. And that's what was so challenging about writing the guide is ultimately you want somebody who's never touched this before to be able to take that guide and successfully get data for an occultation within 3 days. And then get in a car, drive somewhere, find your own coordinate, go find it, take good data, get all back home. It seems absurd, and yet it happens perfectly every time. And it's not due to anything else but the effort of all the people that give their time to do this. And it's wonderful. So this was the picture I wish I had put sooner. This is Lucy's picture of Dinkinesh, the first near-Earth asteroid that it encountered in November of 2023. And so this was really great because when this picture came down, imagine this whole thing was rotated kind of like that. And so we couldn't tell that that was a satellite. It just looked like a very sharp tail. And it was really weird. It looked like one body and that it did this to a very severe point. And everybody immediately just starts, what is that? What are we looking at right now? People start hitting the whiteboard. They're trying to figure it out. And then the next image comes through and it's this, and it's a satellite, and everybody freaks out. And then it keeps going around and around. And then we found out this was a contact binary and everybody just about fainted. It was so exciting. It was so cool. Yeah, they touched. Yeah. Which is just awesome. Arakoth is also a contact binary. The giant lobes just have to very gently touch each other. And so it tells us a lot about how they formed, because they have to it either got obliterated and then reformed that way, or they happen to hit each other really slowly, or something. They have a lot of theories for how things like Arakoth can form, how things like this can form without destroying each other. Yeah, how they get captured by something so small like Dinkinesh. It's a very interesting process, and it's why we were sending Lucy out to look at them. These are some more pictures of Polemoli. So there's another limb profile from another campaign from before I got there. The sad ones from before. And then Sean. This didn't get any better because in Baja we got clouded out. So this is all we know of Sean until Lucy gets there, unfortunately. But it is the smallest of the Lucy prime targets. And then just to go on to the occultation results from the rest of the Lucy targets. Yeah.
With targets that dim, you said like what, 21st magnitude or something like that?
Are you talking about the stars that they eclipse? Yeah.
Okay, with all these new people that run these telescopes, what do they have to make sure they were on that target?
So we know when these asteroids are going to eclipse stars because we know the ephemeris of most of the visible stars we can possibly see really well thanks to a previous survey called Gaia. And so we know at a certain time what the coordinates of that star are on the sky. And then the software that we use is called SharpCap on those laptops. And we can give them at this time, put in these coordinates, and then we've printed a map of what their screen should look like of the star field. And so that's what takes a lot of practice though is, okay, so where's east and does my star field match and getting on field? Because if for some reason your software is glitching out, there are other ways that you can get to that star. So we have star training sets, which is literally a sheet of coordinates of, okay, get to Betelgeuse. And then from Betelgeuse, go 12 degrees west and this far up and you'll hit Aldebaran. And then from there, go this far. And so that's kind of a worst case scenario, but there are a few ways to get there. But ideally, they just put the coordinates in at the right time of night and the telescope will just go to that star. And then they have a verification sheet to help them. But yeah, these are some of the other Lucy targets. So this is Oris. This will be the last one that Lucy visits in the L4 camp. We have Lucas and we have Euripides. I know Euripides is causing a lot of head scratching throughout the people making the shape model in my office right now. They're really excited to get there. That'll be happening, I think, in 2027. Palomeles and Euripides will actually be less than a month apart in a similar time of year in March of 2027. So in about 2 years, we'll hit the first 2 Lucy targets, both within a month, which will just be so exciting. And then ultimately, keep an eye out for the DJ images that are coming out probably on Monday, maybe even Tuesday. They're very excited to get them out. And the Lucy mission is going to be going till 2023, and then actually we'll be in a similar position of New Horizons. It'll have a little bit of juice left over, and it will be in a stable orbit till the end of time, as far as we know. And who knows, if we find another good target for it to hit, we can redirect it a little bit and go visit that target as well. But we're not bringing it back, it's not crashing, we're just leaving it in a stable orbit. Science is the best, and it all started here. And if you're interested in more occultations, the Patroclus Menoetius campaign was the last occultation campaign for the Lucy mission, but we have a warehouse full of 100 telescopes that we still want to put to good use. And so Mark Bowie and then John Keller from CU put together this, not company, but a project, an outreach program called Recon in 2013. And like I said, we know when these occultations are happening, but not just for the Lucy, asteroids are passing in front of stars all the time. And so they're in this giant spreadsheet on the Recon website, and some people want this data for some reasons. Well, there was just one for an asteroid that these French astronomers were interested in that was passing over the States. And so you can grab a telescope, go set up, take the data for the occultation, send it to whoever needs it. And there's this whole big schedule of these occultations when they're happening, and these are just for the US. There's hundreds. Anybody is welcome to join Recon. They call it Science Through Shadows. It's open to absolutely anyone. If you're interested in doing this, you can read my guide and take a telescope out and help some astronomers. Yeah, and that's all that I have, unless you'd like to go into the other project.
I doubt that the pictures from Sunday will make it into my news stream. So where can I go look to see how that went?
I would say, well, Swery has a Lucy website, so it should be front page. Yeah.
Okay.
Lucy, Swery.
Yeah.
Yeah, should be first thing you see. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Lingering concerns about the solar panel that didn't open all the way?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so, actually. Seems like everything's A-okay. As far as I know, the only thing that they're having trouble with now, which I don't fully understand, but the girl that I share an office with is working on it. So the navigation system that they uses the background stars set where the spacecraft is, because the spacecraft isn't going a far enough distance for parallax to throw that off very much. They should stay in the same spot. But now it's close enough to DJ that the background stars are dimming out because they've fixed DJ. And so I think they're trying to figure out a new navigation system. But so I asked her, you took pictures of Dinkinesh and that worked fine. Why can't you just do that again? And I actually don't know why. And she didn't really know why either. I think they just want a better way to do it, because I think once they get actually into the Trojan swarms, the other asteroids might be mistaken for stars and cause a problem. So just saying, hey, focus on the pixels in the middle, ignore the stuff in the background, I don't think that'll work anymore. But I think that they do have a better way to do it, and it's on its way to DJ, no issue right now. So that was, I think, the only thing that caused them a little bit of a hiccup, but I think it's all good now. Yeah.
Are you worried about losing funding for this kind of thing? You're wonderful things, but they're expensive. So.
Yeah. No. As far as I can tell, no. I think Lucy is all good. Unfortunately, a lot of the funding that's being cut isn't, well, I guess fortunately for things like Lucy, the funding that's being taken from NASA is more focused on the climate science and not so much the planetary science. And so I believe Lucy will be okay, because it's already been granted as the 13th Discovery class mission. So I think Lucy's all right. But there are a lot of other missions, the Boulder branch of Swery, that are trying to be funded that's looking a little grim. But Lucy should be okay. New Horizons. Yeah.
This Johansson,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be here next week, you said?
Sunday, this week, Easter.
Boulder?
Yeah.
Is a lecture by any chance? Or
I don't know. He might. He definitely might. The astronomer who actually also discovered the asteroid we named after him will also be there. So that'll be fun.
is that going to be at the observatory there?
So he'll be, at least on Sunday for the encounter, he'll be at the Sweary Boulder office. I don't know if he's giving a talk. If he is, it's probably at CU. So if you're interested, I would look into that because he'll be in town. So maybe they've asked him because there's a lot of collaboration between them anyway.
Google it under I Love Lucy and see if he's talking.
Yeah, right? There is a poster about I Love Lucy with this on there in my office. Yeah, Terry.
Do you have any clue as to the magnitude of how perhaps was alive with one of the objects and you don't really remember? So
Yeah, I believe it's very low because even though this is a very clear, wonderful picture, Lori imagery, distance is over 1,000 kilometers away.
so there's something you could do.
Yeah, there's something we could do. Especially after discovering that satellites that we didn't know about, the risk of hitting one of those. And so the image from Arakoth, I think was only 5,000 kilometers away. It's a very good camera. So the risk of satellite is very, very low. I'm worried about it.
Operational procedure though, to look for these things and say, hey, we need to steer.
Exactly. Yeah. So they've had images of DJ. I totally should have put them up, but it's bigger than any of the stars at the moment. Can't really search. And nothing seems scary about it. There's nothing that, yeah. Yeah.
Can you explain the left side of this picture versus the right side of this picture?
Yeah, totally. So here's Dinkinesh and here's the satellite. Its name was Salam. So when the pictures came, it was like this. They were head on. And then Lucy went around to capture it like this. And so when Lucy was first there, Lucy was here. And then Lucy flew around like this. And so it essentially went around the back side of this left-hand image. So if this left-hand image is like this, Lucy went around and essentially did one of these. And so it revealed that, yeah. Yes, exactly. And then the left side of that bottom rock is what's facing the camera in this image.
Wait, there's 3 things on the right.
Yeah, sorry. So, well, I have a laser pointer. So this side of this small first block is what's facing the camera right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And behind it is another one about the same size?
Yeah, and that's what we didn't see in this image. And so people were like, yeah, there's a satellite. And then Lucy kept going around and we were like, oh my gosh, it's a double, it's a contact binary.
Contact binary, or what do you call it?
Yeah.
It's not touching DJ.
No.
It's,
Well, this is Dinkinesh, but no.
sorry.
Donald Johansen, Dinkinesh, DJ, there's all sorts of stuff.
Even though in the left, that's there, it's actually quite a ways away from it.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And the contact binary, are they contacts for life or are they just?
Till some hits them, yeah. I don't think that they'll shear away from each other naturally, but if something were to hit them, that's a very fragile system. They would certainly break apart.
Telescope coming their way.
Like, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What's the orbital period of those two?
That's a great question. I don't actually know if they were able to figure it out from this because I think Lucy flew. Hence, I don't think they moved in any meaningful way, but slower than a few seconds is, I guess, the way you could whittle that down. But it's so cool because all these ridges on it were something people weren't expecting, and something they're actually still trying to figure out, which is very interesting.
Just kind of like some leftover concrete in the jar.
I'm assuming some of those features such as they are on Dinkinesh are protrusions. Those are not craters, are they?
Well,
There does appear to be a crater toward the lower part of the image there.
yeah.
That and to the right of it,
Uh-huh.
the smaller one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know why those formed. Well, yeah, craters on small bodies. Well, yeah, that's my other topic. But
Were you able to follow?
if you're interested.
Project
despite your commitment to your own academic program?
I think so. My project has actually sort of reached a phenomenon is happening, and all of the leading theories as to why don't do a good enough job anymore. For just aren't effective. Way to figure it out is to take more data of small bodies down to smaller sizes, which you just need better telescopes for and longer surveys for. You just need more data. But I was able to validate all the other processes, so that's what the project will ultimately have to wrap up as and build a better telescope. And fund it. Exactly.
So you're gonna be in Tucson? Is that where?
Flagstaff.
Oh, that Flagstaff's where.
Personal law.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
I was thinking, so we were in Tucson, and that's where they have the mirror lab below the football stadium. You're not there.
Yeah, that's at ASU, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But under maintenance or something over there, so we.
Yes.
Oh, cool. Might have to go back.
Yeah, a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the density of the material is?
Yeah.
And from that, can you interpret if it's rock or metallic scissors?
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors.
No. So that's something that's extremely poorly understood, are the density of these. There's been two Cyrus where and what's so interesting is we think this might be a rubble pile as well, but when boosted on their respective rubble piles, they had the density, they called it, of a ball pit. So luckily they hit it and bounced back off, because if they just kept going, they would have just sunk many, many meters into the surface, because they're barely held together at all. They're not big enough. At least I wish I had a scale bar on here. This also isn't very big, but Bennu I think is a comparable size, and its diameter is less than 1 kilometer. And so they just don't have enough self-gravity to force anything to contract in a meaningful way to help it stay together. But the bigger ones could, and that causes an issue with the cratering for my other project. The strength of the impacted body matters a lot.
Does this radiation detectors on it?
I don't on it, and I haven't read anything about that yet, but I can.
The supposed material from the branching points are considered pristine. Generally, in with meteorites, the carbonaceous chondrites are also considered pristine. Did they ultimately come from the same source? I know that's a huge question to answer.
So
Carbonaceous chondrites compared to
was the main difference. So the Trojans in Jupiter's Lagrange points are past Neptune when it was forming. Typically, the carbonaceous chondrites come from the metallic asteroids from the inside. So they formed on the inside of the sun, and then broken apart before part of was able to different sink. Got then those tiny pockets in the middle, and then what we can see. Ultimately, the side line that they were on when Neptune migrated and the giant planets encountered each other is the main difference. Yeah. Well, if that's all.
Well,
Thank you.
You need to be able to say.
Yeah.
You want to talk to you. Well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all for coming out on a snowy night.